Would you like to learn from those that are taking their lives, their businesses, and their passions to the next level? Best-selling author of Speakeasy and master connector Lou Diamond is here to connect you to some of the most inspiring and amazing people on this planet. Get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to another absolutely awesome, fantabulous episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond, and today on Thrive Loud, we have speaker, writer, and thinker in technology and innovation. As a founder, CEO, and product manager, he's been at the vanguard of technical breakthroughs from the early days of the web to the rise of AI. His new book, The Two-But Rule, Turn Negative Thinking into Positive Solutions, is launching right now and is in my hands as I speak right now. Very excited to have it right here. Thrive Loud listeners, I bring you the author and thought leader and the man who's got the innovation right at his fingertips, John Wolpert. John, welcome to Thrive Loud.
Hey, Lou. Team Lou.
Team Lou. Team John. I'm excited I've been getting to know John, I'd say, for the last several months, pretty much since the summer. Yeah. And brilliant individual, really sharp man, looks really good, he's got great hair, but more notably, he's got some really good thoughts between his ears. What I love to do on this show, give our listeners a little bit of background. I don't want to do a rewind all the way to the womb. I kind of want to go back a little bit, really focusing on the leadership principles that you've developed through all of the great technology work you've been doing and how that's kind of gotten you to the spot you're in today. Sound like a fair way to kick things off?
Yeah. Well, first the dinosaurs came, and then the internet. I think shot past the womb part. Wrote the two-but rule last year. I spent a year writing about butts, which is an odd thing to do, I suppose. But it just came out of a lot of experience that I'd had from so many experiences. The genesis of the two-but rule came when I was working for a fancy innovation consulting firm in San Francisco years ago. And I had this colleague who would say, always but the but. That was it. She would say, but the but. I'd say, but that won't work. And she'd say, but the but. And that never left me. And I swear it's gotten me into more trouble and out of more jams in my career than any other thing I've ever encountered, seriously. And we can talk about that, but that's where the genesis of the book came from. And it really served me in working with research scientists, engineers who are not the sort of people who are inclined to say no killer phrases when you brainstorm. Right? These are people that are, designed to, or that they're about solving problems. A scientist is all about the buts. Right. But that won't work. But, and in a way, it's a very positive thing because they say, but that won't work. But I'm going to spend the rest of my life figuring it out. And there's the second but.
So to clarify for what it is for the but rule to the listener that's trying to put this together, what is the two-but rule?
The two-but rule starts pretty simply, but that won't work, but it would if. As long as you add a second but, you are maintaining momentum. So I could have called the book Momentum Thinking for Innovation and Problem Solving, but that would have been boring. So the two-but rule is just a lot more funny. And it is a book chock full of butt jokes. It really is. I have a 6-year-old son, so that worked for me.
When you think about an innovation situation where you made a great comment, you said the two-but rule in your career has gotten you into more trouble and probably solved and helped you get out of it. It's almost like two wrongs kind of make a right, or two negatives make a positive in this particular case. As someone who's a trained coach, we're actually taught to do a lot of yes and thinking, to always be in the positive realm. So let's flip that, and now let's try to say, hey, how do we incorporate these buts? Because I'd be the first person when I'd hear a but to think, well, we're limiting ourselves. But in a weird way, what you're doing is you're trying to figure out what's the solution to that but, or what's the alternative way of doing things that's going to spin that but into maybe a yes and, possibly?
Interesting you should say yes and, because a lot of people who hear about the 2-but rule come to that, go to exactly the place you just went, yes and. But you think about it, yes and, if Dr. Evil is proposing to take over the world with you, the answer isn't yes and, it's but maybe you're doing that because your mommy didn't love you, but maybe that's not a great idea, but maybe we could do something else instead, right? So, but don't do that, but we could do something else. And that's really why it's not just a sterile technique. It's not just a 2-page book. In fact, I just got Jonathan Todd Ross is doing the narration for the book. He's nice. A legend. It's very exciting. Yes. And he sent me a lovely note on Facebook, DM'd me that said he thought, he didn't know what to think of the book. And when he got into it, it didn't repeat itself. He just thought it was a joy to read. And it was very nice to hear from him that way. So it's not just, but that won't work, but it would if. You could read that in one page. There's a lot of nuance to it. And one of the most important things is understanding intention. Mm. And I started an R&D lab or a consortium in Australia years ago. And that was our whole thing. We were trying to share what we thought originally were inventions, companies who couldn't share each other's IP, trying to find connections. We generated $500 million in trackable deal flow between these companies that never would have thought to talk to each other. But what we discovered was that the inventions didn't matter. What it mattered were the intentions. Mm. Right. So if I have a pencil, I can patent it. I can say, here, I'm going to put a piece of graphite through the middle of this wood. I'm going to put a rubbery thing on the top. I'm going to shave the edge on it. And here's my pencil. I can patent it. I can tell everybody about it. And you might write something boring with it, or you might write something interesting with it. It's a good invention. Or I could take it and shove it in your eye, and now it's a disruptive innovation. Right? It's what I intend to do with this pencil matters, and intentions are terrifying to share if you think about it. Right? I can't tell you about my intention to shove the pencil in your eye if I want you to stand still while I do it. So that's a primer on intentions. What is motivating your intention? And then what is motivating my objection to that intention? Right. And then the trick is, can we find a way to square those things and meet everyone's needs together?
Right.
That's the foundation of the 2-but rule. But I don't like that. But you're a big dumb poopy head but you wouldn't be if, right? But you want to go left and I want to go right. And this actually leads to an interesting part of the book called the silly butt, or I think I called this Elon Musk's fuzzy butt. Elon Musk is actually quite good at this. Yeah, I don't know how he's going to react to that chapter. But in the
or to this piece of the episode when he's listening and he tunes in, which we're hoping he can do. Elon, hello.
Indeed. Hey Elon. Saw you on Lex. It was great. So you want to maintain momentum with the 2-but rule. That's the whole point. So you can come up with a silly but. You can say, in fact, this is a true story. I was running a lab at IBM, and a new hire came in and said, "Hey, what if we did this?" Engineer right off, didn't waste a minute, said, "But that won't work." And I did what I do. I said, "But it would work if." And they said, "But it would work if gravity was different." And another engineer, true story, jumps out of their seat and says, "Wait a minute." And that led to a couple of patents and a project that got the attention of the top brass, and it was very exciting. That was momentum, right? Your second but doesn't have to be a particularly good but. It just has to keep momentum going. And then you say, "But that won't work." But what if? But that won't work either. But that would have. You do that 5 times, in my experience in research, you'll get a patent out of it at least every time.
And this is actually an interesting piece because you're applying a way to come up with a positive solution from the natural things we the limits or the stop signs that we might hit along the way. And it works out really well, as it's worked in the past for you for a lot of product development. Let's shift that to people development for a quick second and channel the two-but rule as it relates to coming up with positive solutions, maybe even on working together. There's lots of different conflicts leaders face all the time. And when it comes to making certain decisions about maybe the way you're doing business or the business line you're in, I could see a lot of the places on the two-but rule. Talk to me. You ever think about how the two-but rule can be applied in improving working relationships or connections or establishing relationships? I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question, because that's foundational, right? I talk about in the book that this word "but" it can be a real relationship killer, but it can also mend relationships if you apply the two-but rule, right? So, in fact, we have now a no buts culture. We are all afraid of our butts. I mean, we're running from our butts. We're literally running from our own butts. That takes commitment, by the way. That's a hard thing to do. Run from your own butt. And that fear of the one butt mic drop, that is the culture. I don't know, Lou, how old you are, but I'm a Gen Xer, and the boomers would come in with the one butt mic drop and crush our dreams, right? And then we didn't like that. So I think we may be at fault for creating this no butts policy police culture where everyone is afraid to show their butt to anyone else ever, whether you're the boss or an employee. Everybody's afraid of everybody else today, and we're afraid of seeming negative. I think especially leaders. I'm more afraid of seeming negative to an employee today than I am in presenting critical thinking to say a boss. I don't have a boss right now, but I mean, I've got my.
You're married. You have a boss.
I'm married.
Listeners need to know I got to meet his better half.
You know what? I checked myself on that. Thanks for delivering the line. Yeah, absolutely. So that I think that's the whole the new thing that we've done in society is made a no buts culture where we can't say but that won't work. Yeah. And there's a reason for that, because one butt guy is also, that butt head is a momentum killer, but no buts policy is a more insidious momentum killer. Imagine, I write about this in the book in Apollo 13. When the guy that said, "Hey, let's turn the main engine on to get them back home faster," if somebody said, and this actually happened, several engineers went, "Wait a minute, don't do that. That's a bad idea." Imagine somebody saying, "Well, you're being negative." That would have blown up the ship. It turns out, because the engine had been damaged and it would have been catastrophic. So, but they could slingshot themselves around the moon, get them back, and they saved the 3 astronauts. That was a great story.
By the way, I love this, and I also love the fact that as this episode becomes transcribed, the number of BUTs, 1T, and BUTTs that will have to be broken out, we'll just break the algorithm of the two-but rule. But we're just going to go with the BUT one because that's in the title of the book.
No, it's important to get the spelling right when handling your butts at work.
Oh, and I love this. We're going to have so many sound bites of the butts in this episode. The social reel will be spectacular. I have something that I thought about, and I asked the question specifically as it comes to leadership, because you're right. There's a real advantage to the history that you've had in your business career. Obviously, in building products or building teams around those products or innovations, when you're innovating, you have to come up with new ideas all the time. We had last year, right about a year ago, we had the founder of the gentleman who came up with Idea Flow. And literally, his whole process is all about coming up with ideas almost constantly. Like it's literally, to his point, almost an addiction where all he's doing is coming with idea of idea of idea. And very similar, trying to not think that there is anything as a bad idea, because to your point, lots of things can fall out on the floor. But I think what the two-but rule actually ends up doing is that it keeps almost like keeping a volleyball up in the air or bouncing a balloon off of an idea. It's constantly, as the thing starts to come up, here's an idea, oh, but that won't work, and it starts to fall back down, and then you kind of hit another butt to keep it up. It's keeping all those bouncing balloons up. And I think in the positive spirit. That's what we're trying to do. But I also think it's really good because what you have to do to keep the balloon is you got to be all on your toes. Organizations got to be constantly thinking of new change. Leaders got to be thinking about how to handle with people and the decisions. So the two-butt rule is really keeping everybody on their game, on their toes, to figure out how to keep those butts up.
And it helps to, yes, and it helps to build camaraderie, right? So if everybody is, this is why I hope the book becomes something that is normal reading for people, and business schools and engineering schools and in general, is because we need to get to a place where people expect that second butt, right? If I know that you're going to give me a second butt, I'm going to let you out. I'm going to let you have the first one.
Right.
But if I hear, but that won't work, or something that sounds negative, and I've just come up with something, I've put myself out there, and I'm fearful that you've just stomped on it, I'm going to be in a state of resistance when the second butt comes, right? So we need to, as a society and as teams, become acclimated to the idea that there's always a second butt coming.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that will help with camaraderie, help mend relationships. It's also kind of funny, right? You say, well, what do you think of this? Oh, show me your butts. I mean, that's just funny. I don't know if it's funny anymore.
Oh, hold on a second. It is funny. I'll just go to this. I'll just go to me for a second here on the camera for the ones looking here. If you haven't looked at the cover very carefully, very well designed here with two butts coming together, if you would.
That cover was a great experience with the two-butt rule, because the original designer at Wiley, wonderful, had a fantastic experience with Wiley. Jim Minitel, if you're out there, shout out, amazing acquiring editor. Tracy Hamilton Brown was an amazing, worked with me every day. We were working on Google Doc to do it, which was, I guess, new for them, and that was very, very productive. Loved the experience, and they got a designer. And at first, I wasn't crazy about the design. In fact, I said, "But this is terrible." And I said, "But if I could work with them," and Jim said, "No, we don't do that." But no. But what he did is he went to the distribution team and had a major, I won't say which one, but a major bookstore, which is now stocking the book. 300 stores across America. I will say the name is Barnes & Noble. So on
there's not that many stores left.
Right. No, I'm very excited. Barnes & Noble has got 300 stores, front of store, end caps, I guess, and multiple copies. Awesome. Apparently this is fairly unusual for a first timer. And I'm very excited. I think they did a great job. But yeah, and so to break the logjam of this design impasse, they brought in the distributor, and they said, "No, we hate it too." So I drew it. It's on my wall here. These two arcs, and then the designer, instead of getting upset about it, they got interested, and they said, "Well, that won't work exactly, but if we do it this way, it would." And ultimately, we had this a cover that literally cracks me up every time I look at it. And
it is very good.
The other cool thing was that, they actually went beyond what I suggested, and the color scheme is deliberate on their part, and I had not thought of this.
Oh yeah.
You notice the colors are red and blue.
I was going to say, as we approach 2024, very, very interesting within that. Yes.
Yeah. There's not any political content in the book, except that on the back you'll read Jack Spear from NPR's endorsement, and I love what he said. He said, people need to read this in government, in journalism, to raise the level of discourse, right? I mean, think about Congress. We're just shoving our butts in each other's face all the time, and we're not saying, what is behind why that person needs that, why that constituency needs that, whether I agree with them or not, and what's behind why I don't like that. And how can we find a way to square those two things that works? From gun control to the border, we need to have we need to be handling a lot more butts together.
I'm going to laugh at every one of the puns that comes in here. And by the way, you're 100% right. And I think, look, like anything, the more conversations we have, the more opportunities we have to connect. And even if there's butts being thrown around, if we look at those butts back and forth in this way that you're thinking about it, we're going to have more conversations that might come up with innovation, or an idea, or a solution.
You can't get to a truly innovative solution without this. So here's a teeter-totter. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of the Congress problem, right? We all think that in order for me to go up, you have to go down, vice versa. But I don't want to go down when you go up, right? But we could turn it into an airplane wing and go up together, right? So how do I change the context on the problem? And if you don't embrace your butts, if you don't embrace the issues with the idea, I mean, the idea that there are no bad ideas is a terrible idea, really. I know why. I know the place from which that came, and I was part of I've been in innovation for 30 years, and disruptive innovation, brainstorming. There's no killer phrases,
but you can't get to the good ideas without having gone through the bad ones.
Exactly. I mean, YouTube started as a dating service,
right? Yeah.
PayPal was a way to trade money between Palm Pilots,
right? That's true,
right? So yeah.
So I love asking authors this question. I want to hear where you go with this. There's a gift you gave the world. Here it is. I'm holding it in my hand, the 2-butt rule. You worked hard in it. You put it out there. It's going to be highly regarded. And obviously, as the listeners have been hearing, it's got a really interesting concept that we all should be thinking about, which is the gift that we received. But every single author I've spoken to on this program, there's been this happy accident or a gift that the author receives, the creator receives in putting this content together. John Wolpert, what was the happy accident or gift that you received in bringing the 2-butt rule into the universe?
Well, there's a chapter in the book called "This Book Saved My Butt," and it's where I kind of break the fourth wall and talk about my experience. And I was working I've worked in many fields: life sciences, molecular biology, weirdly enough, genetics, and artificial intelligence, object-oriented programming. And I was working in Watson at IBM in Watson on AI before the whole LLM thing took off. This was years ago. And one of my favorite bosses at IBM, Jerry Cuomo, calls and he's like, "Hey, Lewis, it's Clark." Called me Clark. Called me Lewis. And I'm like, "What do you want, Jerry?" And he's like, "Well, there's this thing called blockchain, and the CEO wants us to go take a look." And I was like, "Well, give me a ship and crew, and I'll go take a look." And he said, "Well, I got a musket, 2 dogs, and a canoe." And I said, "Oh, okay." And we got lucky. It became a very big thing, as you know, blockchain and crypto and all that stuff. And I went on that journey, and man, did I run into a lot of butts. It turns out that the foundations of how blockchain works doesn't scale. It just doesn't work the way we claim it could work. And in this case, the problem was there was a whole bunch of people that suddenly made a whole lot of money on the grift, on the fakery of thinking that somehow we could make the technology work at scale for something like digital cash. It can never be digital cash. You don't ever get to buy a pack of gum with crypto.
Right.
Crypto is better described not as digital cash or digital gold, but more like digital bearer bonds, in that they are very useful if you have an allergy to oversight and regulation and taxes and want to move large fistfuls of money across borders with impunity. Then if you can get somebody to buy those things from you or trade or fence them, then that's very useful. It just doesn't scale. And it turns out in the age of AI, you really don't want to buy a pregnancy kit in Texas with crypto. In other words, the privacy on, this, what a lot of people thought was that they had there was fundamental privacy to it. No, I'll make you, I'll find you. Don't do crimes on blockchains, kids. So I really got disillusioned with that. Not because I always knew crypto was a bit of a Ponzi scheme and a grift. I'm not a big fan. I never was. But I thought maybe we could make the technology work for something. And I worked and worked and worked 8 years of my life down the drain looking for ways of making blockchain something that could work in production at scale in a way that we could claim. Never found it. And I was fresh out of butts. And I was just done. I walked away from the whole space. I wasn't a disgruntled employee, and I was never fired for anything. I made a lot of money on it, was well paid, no problems. I just don't like the idea of having another conversation with somebody begging me to pump their token because they bet their kid's education fund on it. It bothers me a lot. And so I don't like that space. But it turns out that all that money that was made on that funded a ton of cryptography work, because those people do want privacy. And so there's something called zero knowledge cryptography, which really does actually work. It's hard, computationally expensive, but useful with or without a blockchain. In fact, it's more useful without blockchains at all. I won't go into the details of it, but being able to share without sharing. If I need to coordinate, you and I, we're different companies, and say I loan you money, and we need to prove to, say, the insurer that I didn't break any laws in loaning you the money, but we don't want to give all the data to that insurer because that's data. There are issues with that, right? We can use what's called a zero knowledge proof to be able to prove to the insurance company that I didn't loan you over the usury law in Texas, for example, that says there's a limit to how much I can charge you in interest. I can say both of us have the same records. We both have the same agreement. We both didn't violate the law, and that's all you need to know. Give me the insurance. That's pretty useful. I mean, think about supply chain. I've got a friend who who collects data from vendors to the big OEMs, like car companies. Yep. And the vendors of those car companies don't want that data going to those car companies. That's their internal data, their telemetry, their supply chain relationships. They don't want the vendors they don't want the OEMs knowing about that. But the OEMs, the big car manufacturers, need to know whether or not there is a risk in the supply chain, or like a single source vendor or something. You can use zero knowledge cryptography to say, hey, leave your data where it is. Hey, vendor, I don't need your data. You don't need to put this giant honeypot of data together where if I ever got hacked, everybody would be in trouble. Leave your data where it is. Send me these proofs, and I will use those proofs to assure the OEMs that they are not that there isn't a single source problem, for example. And it's a little wonky, but writing the book, I found my second butt.
Well, that was going to say, you found your second butt. I got it. That's what I was looking for. The gift in writing the book was finding the second butt. Yes.
Yeah, it helped me find my butt again, and that was the gift it gave me.
I love it. So I was like, what was the gift? Now I got it. But now I learned more. By the way, I couldn't agree more with you about your take on the crypto space. And just on a side note, one of my favorite stories was certain businesses that blockchain was ideally made for. There's so much politics around trying to make sure that those way of lives are there. For instance, title companies. The lovely, when you buy a home, you pay a title insurance to make sure that deed of your home is safe. Well, guess what? It's in one particular building. If you had crypto and you had a record of every one of those things, you'd be able to say, well, John sold it to Lou on this date, and we'd have the record of it, and here's what you needed. This was the industry that I looked at and said, this is one that could be fixed, but there's too many people that make money off of title insurance. I want to make sure it doesn't happen.
Well, there's that, but also, and this is the problem with not having a no-buts society. In fact, blockchain was born of a no-buts society, because when you look for 10 minutes, and we did, I've been down that road, exactly that problem space. When I was working at a fairly big blockchain incubator, we worked on every kind of thing, real estate, everything, and hundreds of projects. And all of them, none of them that I know of really, outside of the ones that are supporting crypto and DeFi and that sort of thing, none of them really worked out. And in that particular one, again, you don't actually need a blockchain. In fact, it's kind of an anti-pattern because you don't want everybody to know about your house details.
Right.
Right. It's a digital nudist colony. And it's scaling challenge digital nudist colony. Even a private blockchain is just a digital nudist colony on a private beach. And you're leaving tracks in the sand. So even if you have an invisibility cloak on, I'm going to find you. Yep. Right. So it's a terrible, terrible design pattern for what it turns out. So, but that doesn't work. But zero knowledge cryptography can solve that problem without trashing the entire basic industry behind it.
I've got my visual image of the digital nudist colony and not wanting to see any of their butts, just to be clear on that note.
Yes, indeed.
Let's do this.
It's a lot of ugly butts.
It's a lot of ugly butts. I want to do the admin part of the show here, John. John, share with the listeners all the places they can find you. They can get a copy of this, the 2-Butt Rule, and we'll put it all in the show notes, but I want them to hear it directly from you.
Well, you can find all the details about the 2-Butt Rule and what I do and where I'm speaking. And also, I'll put a great plug in for Team Roddery. Team Roddery is a platform for, it's kind of like Masterclass, but it's live for companies that are doing teamwork experiences. They've got some amazing ones. So Team Roddery, TEAMRADERIE. I've got a new experience on Team Roddery, but there's some really amazing folks that you can get access to, including like French Laundry will take your team through baking some stuff, and they send you kits to bake something together. There are Olympic gymnasts that are on there. They're just wonderful, interesting people. I think Adam Grant's been on there. Certainly Amy Edmondson, Bob Sutton. I'm a big fan of Bob Sutton from Stanford. Really good experience. So Team Roddery, and you can find that on jwolpert, JWOLPERT.com. And if you go into the speaker or speaking tab, you'll find all the details about that.
We're going to go down Fun Street here with Mr. John Wolpert, and we're going to start off with a first here on Flywheel. I'm actually thinking, I'm telling my producers here to put in music on this because we're going to have it play underneath here. Can you share with the listeners what you shared with me as one of your all-time favorite movies?
Buckaroo Banzai, Across the Eighth Dimension. One of my favorite movies. Peter Weller, Ellen Barkin. And then just this huge, one of my favorite things that I like about this movie is that it was this nexus point for just so many of the actors that we love today. John Lithgow,
yeah,
who, by the way, his book on poetry is so good. Go get that book. His reading, in fact, the audiobook of it, his reading of the Jumblies by Lear is just so very good. He was on it. Jeff Goldblum, just tons of and all these little cameos. It's a hilarious, silly, stupid movie. Very much in line with the 2-Butt Rule, right? It had a serious, as all good comedy. There, the Dave Chappelles of the world and others. There's a deep seriousness behind the silliness, and that's what I liked about it.
Yeah, no, it was a classic, and listeners need to understand we've had close to 1,000 guests on Thrive Loud, and when they come in, sometimes I catch it beforehand, or sometimes I'm doing some prep notes beforehand, and many times the movies, for those who've been loyal fans, I ask it more because we're trying to see where we connect on where people's interests are, and there's some really interesting takes on it. This one was a very interesting take, also because I happen to know John, and then I connected the dots on Buckaroo Banzai, which is certainly an offbeat type of movie. And most people, in fact, no one has ever suggested it on the list here. So I'm very glad. One, we love when we have breakthroughs. And two, it's a great movie. Go see it if you haven't seen it, or look it up. I'm sure you could find it on streaming somewhere, or it's got to be.
It's out there. Did you see it in the theater, or did you see it on like HBO?
I saw it on like HBO. I saw it on HBO, definitely, like right after when it was released to cable. I know I didn't see it in the theater, but I saw it more than once. Let's just leave it at that. Probably several times, knowing me.
Right.
We're gonna stroll down our speakeasy pub crawl now, and we're gonna do the Fun Street, if you would. All right, take a shot at gumption. And what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you questions. First things that come to your mind. These are things that lift you up, motivate you, make you feel good, basically make you thrive. He took his gumption. He's ready to roll. Okay. John Wolpert, of late, is there a song that is kind of like your new jam or one that pumps you up?
Wow. Okay. So the song that pumps me up, I have a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old. So I know all of the songs, that the kids watch on, anything behind Disney Plus. I know all of the words and all the songs on. I'm going up on a particular song that gets me. I've been doing a lot of binaural beats, so this is a stupid answer. But I put that on in the morning. Those binaural beats, the alpha, like these waveform tracks, and it really does kind of get me going.
All right, I like it. We got music and different sounds going on. I love that. A favorite food that's not a dessert.
Favorite food that's not a dessert is cachava. Cachava.
Okay.
It's delicious.
It's like an advertisement.
I bought this blend jet so that I could go on the road and still get my cachava and not go off the wagon.
I like it. A favorite dessert.
Favorite dessert? When I was in the theater years and years ago, my parents would come and deliver a Sara Lee cherry cheesecake, semi-frozen, to my dressing room instead of flowers, because apparently you're not allowed to send flowers to your son in the theater. So,
I would like the cherry cheesecake. That would work for me.
Oh, it was delicious. I was very popular. Yeah.
An activity you wish you did more of?
These days, I've got a bike. I live in Raleigh, and Raleigh is apparently a biking town. But I don't get on that bike enough. I wind up, but I do walk my son to school, and that's been great. So I drop him off and I keep walking. It's kind of, that's my thing right now.
An activity you wish you did less of?
I cannot think of a thing that I want to do less of suddenly.
Okay.
I got nothing, man. I got nothing.
Got nothing. An activity that's relatively new to you that you've recently tried that you like so much you want to tell everybody else to try it.
Going on Thrive Loud.
Well, there you go. That's good. We've had thousands of people come on this show. I don't necessarily know if that's something that everybody can do, but no. But it is something new, and we appreciate it. I like it. If I could snap my fingers, and John Wolpert could be anywhere in the world, where is he?
I've got a great answer for this. I got a note from Wiley, from the publisher, this morning, and they told me I could say this. It's already been picked up in Vietnam, the book.
Oh, wow.
It's been licensed in Vietnam. I don't know when it breaks there, but I sent that email to my wife, and I'm like, we could go. We have friends who run a company in Vietnam, and we're like, we should go. So that was fun.
Vietnam. That would be one. You could snap your fingers and be there, and which would definitely be better than having to fly the 16 some odd hours to get there. But I totally heard, and I've heard it's beautiful, and food is amazing. That's what I've heard from people who've gone. Definitely worth it.
Hopefully, John, we'll have 1 million copies sold before then, so I can fly in style. But yeah,
I like it. Like the way you're thinking. John Wolpert, everybody check it out. The 2 But Rule. Great to have you on the program, my friend. Great to have you. Continued success with this. And I've got my eyes out for your butt, man. I'm watching out for both of them.
You got my back, literally. Thanks, Lou. It's great to see you, and I love the show. I do watch it and listen to it. So thank you.
It's an honor to have you here, man. Well, to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. And until next time, keep moving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Check us out on the web at thriveloud.com and follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at Thrive Loud. And check us out on the Good Pods app at Thrive Loud, where you can follow, listen, and connect directly to Lou and all of the Thrive Loud episodes. Thanks for listening.